to chase away any gloom. Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus, He's in this very room, and in this very room there's quite enough love for all the world, and in this very room there's quite enough joy for all the world, and there's quite enough hope and quite enough power to chase away any gloom. For Jesus, Lord Jesus, He's in this very room, in this very room. I might mention at this point that my mom wanted me to go into singing, and I don't read music, by the way. When I went to Olivet College and started as a music major, they told me my second year that I'd have to learn 2 instruments, and I told them I didn't play the radio real well, so that probably would not work out. But of course, I knew I could continue to sing, and I was going into teaching and coaching, and I knew there would be some conflicts with the music and the coaching. Thank you, Calvary Reformed Church, for having Sheree and I here today. We made it cross country and went to 4th and then to 6th and then over to 5th, and we did make it around the lake, Crooked Lake, and all of that kind of stuff. But I have a friend of mine, you might be interested in this. He was in this area, and he saw that a sign out one day. He was on his way home from work, and it said, puppies for sale. And he really didn't want a puppy, and he went by that sign for about 2 weeks or so, and all of a sudden he went by one night and it said, Calvary Reform Puppies for sale. He thought, that's strange, and pulls in, and he says, knocks on the door, and he says, I really don't want a puppy, but I'm just, kind of curious. For a couple weeks here, it's just said puppies for sale, and today it says Calvary Reform Puppies for sale. What's up? They said they opened their eyes. Oh boy.
That's good.
I would like to, at this time, if I might do so, I'd like to have any veteran in the room that has served this country or is actively serving. Would you please stand up? Veterans. Give them a hand, please.
No.
Stay up, stay up, stay up. Now, if you're a father, raise your hand. If you're a father, raise your hand. Okay, very good. Very good. Thank you for Happy Father's Day. Could I please have, are there any Gold Star families in the room? Go ahead, guys, sit down. Are there any Gold Star families in the room? My wife and I have been doing, as a matter of fact, I was on the floor of the Senate for the Memorial Day speech this year. I was the keynote speaker, and in the balcony were over 300 Gold Star families there. Those who, of course, have given their loved ones' life for this country. Are there anyone in the room that gave birth to the children of the men who stood? Would you please stand up? If you gave birth to the children, stand up. Moms. Marilyn. Come on, moms. Stand up. Okay. All right. You know what? it's because of you that he's enjoying Father's Day. Okay. I do the same thing the other way around. I tell my sons on Mother's Day, you know, it's because of you that they're celebrating Mother's Day. Faith, hope, and love has been the theme of my medal, and I'm going to tell you a real brief, within 2 minutes if I can do it, how this came about. 49 years ago, after the battle, my lieutenant came to me and said, Jim, I put you in for the Distinguished Service Cross, second highest medal. And I looked at him, and he said, but they said you're nothing but a PFC. They don't get that. Put him in for the Bronze Star, which they did, and I got with V Device for Valor, and I wore that for 48 years until last year. But the process was quite interesting. After 42 years, well, actually after 40 years, 9 years ago, my lieutenant went back after the Distinguished Service Cross. 3 congresspersons, 2 men, 1 woman, represented me, and then he had to do all the work through that process. It took 6 years and 4 months for him to get the paperwork into the Army Board of Decorations and Awards, which is really where it has to start there. Can't do anything until it gets in there. I won't, again, this is the real short version. So at that particular time, I was with my 3rd congressperson, who was Debbie Stabenow. And she's the one that 4 months after she took over, Levin had been there before that, and he retired. So she called and said that it had finally gotten into the Army Board of Decorations and Awards. And my wife says, give it to a woman, she'll get it done. And yeah, and so anyway, we heard nothing then for a year. And so then we'd heard after a year that it had gone up to the Pentagon. For a couple months after that, we were at a IHOP, and I got a call from Debbie Stabenow that the paperwork had come across the desk of Ashton Carter. He was the defense secretary of President Obama, and he looked at the 9 eyewitness letters that the lieutenant had collected. Only 32 of us walked out of there, and he got 9 eyewitness letters. And you couldn't give me a medal high enough to replace the letters that those men wrote. It said I did my job. And so he looked at it and said, the Distinguished Service Cross not high enough. So he's the one that recommended me for the Congressional Medal of Honor. Had to pass a bill because that has to be given within 5 years. So they passed a bill to waiver all of that, and then finally President Trump gave it to me. That's a real short version of it. This medal, though, is not mine, of course. It belongs to the 89 men that went into that battle with me, whether they made it out of there or not. And actually, it represents love, which, you know, we've been singing about and talking about all morning. It was the love of 89 men that was so strong that you can't even measure it. I mean, we were willing to give our lives for each other. There were 2,000 NVA and 700 VC. That is not a fair game against the 89 of us. And I've met some Marines out there. They brought in their Cobras, and the Air Force brought in their Spookies, and the Navy was shooting from the China Sea onto the enemy. So it was the big team. This coach knows who the big team is. And it was the big team that saved us and got us out of that particular situation. You know, our character is developed and built by the many, many individuals who influence us throughout our life. I often say, this is not Jim McCloughan standing up here talking to you. I'm the culmination of all of those individuals, my neighbors, whether you're from a city setting or a rural setting. I grew up in the country, went to a one-room country school, didn't have electricity until I was 5, didn't have running water till I was 9. A lot of yellow snow on the way to the two-holer out back in the wintertime. Didn't quite make it there. But my mentors, the people who have mentored you, those that were your teachers or your coaches, or in any group that you were in, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H, and of course, our relatives and our parents. the person who influenced me a lot was my father. And my dad was just a blue-collar man, hard-working man. And he'd do anything for me or my two brothers. Mike, who was from the Portage area here, taught at Portage Central for 38 years, I believe it was, and 36 years. And my brother Tom, who taught elementary school. My mom had an 8th grade education. My dad had a high school education. And their 3 sons went on to earn master's degrees, each one of us. And my older brother was the first McCloughan to graduate from college, and I was the second McCloughan to graduate from college. And then they drafted me and tried to kill me right after that. But he also was not afraid to discipline my brothers and I. He didn't have to do it a lot because he was so doggone good at it. You know, this spare the rod and spoil the child. My father never did spare the rod or his belt. And it didn't have to happen too many times. And he told me at one time I could see tears in my dad's eyes when he had to do that. And he was not treated real well by his father, I found out from my uncle. So it was hard for him to do that, but he knew it was for our good. And so, as I said, we learned fast. We were fast learners. He worked hard from sun up to sundown, and sometimes after sundown. Built our house from ground up by himself. Actually dug out the basement after he put the house up, and using a wheelbarrow and a shovel, and jacking up the corners and then putting the bricks down, the whole thing. So you can see my dad was a real hard-working man. I often said, though, that we were not poor, we just didn't have any money. And that's true. That's true. And I thought, until I went to school, that everybody had a two-holer out back. I thought that's how people lived. But it wasn't true. We had a flush and toilet there where I went to school at Wood School. He always encouraged me to take the talent that God has given me and use it. He taught my brothers and I how to work hard, of course. He taught me responsibility. He said, son, you never do anything halfway. You do it to the best of your ability. You don't have to compare yourself with anyone else, but do it to the best of your ability and do it till the end. And that's why when I was wounded the first night and the lieutenant told me to get on a helicopter, I had gotten close enough to the hill, Nuyan Hill, where the battle was taking place, to see the enemy flowing down about 3/4 of a mile away like lava off of that hill. I didn't know how many there were, but I knew there were a lot. And I'd rather be dead in a rice paddy than to be in a hospital and find out that one of my men died because their medic wasn't there to do his job until the end. He taught me integrity, to do the right thing. It's carried me through a lot of things. You know, you have to make decisions as a coach. I coached 133 teams in football, wrestling, baseball, and American Legion Baseball, and the decisions that I had to make with athletes. Or as an official, I officiated wrestling for 25 years, did 18 state finals, and the decision you make in the middle of a championship match there for 2 boys trying to earn a state championship, you have to make the right decision. Because on a close one, you're going to be 50% wrong. One group's going to like the call, and another group's not going to like the call. So do the right thing, even though nobody else is watching. That's the important part. Can you do the right thing when nobody else is watching? And I tell the young people the same thing, but I told them, someone's always watching. And that's true. That's very true. Paul Harvey, page 2. One of the best things that my dad taught me was a sense of humor. And the gentleman that stood up, I don't have to preface this joke that I'm going to tell you because they know what it is. I don't have to do it for them. But for those of you that don't know, there are what we call Dear John letters that are sent out to guys quite often that are in the service, and that is when the significant other back home sends a letter, says she doesn't love him anymore. Well, Private John Smith, got one of those letters from Maria, and Maria wrote that she couldn't wait for him. She didn't love him anymore. As a matter of fact, she's already dating somebody else. And could he please send her picture back? And he was all depressed and sitting there depressed when the drill sergeant came in and asked him what had happened, and he told him. He said, well, can I see your picture? And he handed it to her and went back to sulking. And the drill sergeant went off to the other folks in the company and asked them if they had any pictures of their significant other, wives, fiancés, girlfriends. And then some of them did, and so they gave it to him. And the drill sergeant sat down and wrote this letter that Maria thinks is coming from Private Smith, and puts the pictures in with this letter. Dear Maria, I am sorry that you don't love me anymore, and I'm sorry you can't wait for me. And I'm really disappointed and even hurt that you're already dating someone else. And I can certainly understand why you'd want your picture back. But I can't remember which one you were, so will you take your picture and send the rest of them back? Oh, I wished I'd have known that story when I was in the service. Oh, yeah. As a combat medic, I called my job a positive job in a negative situation. I was able to save lives. And I was able to do that because of the mental discipline that I learned from sports, in particular college football. I was a 4-year college football player and a 4-year college wrestler. And the mental discipline, I'm not going to shorten the physical part of that. I was pretty physically fit, and I'm not too bad now for a 106-year-old man, but for a 72-year-old man. But the mental discipline that I learned to focus during the many, many battles that we went up against, and that I had to perform my duties. And in some of those duties, I'm the only one that saw the carnage. The other men didn't even see that. I've never even spoken and described that to anyone except my counselor, my VA counselor. My wife hasn't even heard it. What I saw. The flip side to that positive job in a negative situation was that I also held 18, 19, and 20-year-old boys in my arms. Some of them called me by their mother's name. Some of them had a conversation with their Lord. Some of them just left silently. I heard their last words, and I saw them take their last breath. And that has stayed with me my entire life. I don't know all their names because in some instances they weren't in my platoon, but I can see their faces, each and every one. When I went finally to the wall in 2013, I had 50 names of individuals that we lost during the conflicts that I was involved in. As I walked in, there were people that had, names and little cards, and the guy looked at me and went, whoa. And I said I was a combat medic. He said, oh, I understand. I had a page of 50 names. Some of those boys were never able to get married. They never saw their child take its first steps, play in a little league game, start school, graduate. They never walked their daughter down the aisle, and they're not at the many anniversaries, family gatherings, and they're not here today to celebrate the holiday called Father's Day. The price that has been paid, and I've told so many people, is unimaginable that we can sit in this room and worship without any fear of someone rushing in here or bombs coming on top of us. I'm going to tell you of a life-changing experience that I had the second day of the battle. I was called out and went towards the enemy, and about 25, 30 yards out was a man laying in the middle of a rice paddy, and he had a stomach wound, AK-47, and some organs were exposed, and so I took care of that, put the pressure bandages on, and then took my own water, which I didn't drink anything for 48 hours because I knew I needed the water for my patients. And I had to put the water on there so the organs would not dry out. And I dragged him into a trench line that the French had left there when they fought the Vietnamese way back when. And I'm contemplating how I'm going to carry this man. I can't throw him over my shoulders, otherwise, all of the work that I'd done would be no good. And so I finally decided I'd carry him like a baby. I'd cradle him in my arms, and this was one of those times when being short was really good. Can do chin-ups on a curb, reach up, pull my socks down, that kind of stuff. But I could get real low then, and I could run pretty well, even with him in my arms. And all of a sudden, this thought out of nowhere came over me. It had been since I was a small boy that I told my dad that I loved him. In the 50s and 60s, dads didn't say that to their sons, and sons didn't say that to their brothers and their dad. And I knew my dad and I were best friends even. He wasn't only my dad, but one of my best friends. I knew he loved me, even though he didn't say it, and I assumed he knew that I loved him too. But I said a prayer, and I said, Lord, if you get me out of this hell on earth so I can look my dad in the face one more time and tell him that I love him and hug him, I'll be the best dad and the best coach and the best teacher that I can possibly be. Well, I ran to my father in the O'Hare airport when I came home. We hugged and told each other that we loved each other like it had been happening for the 24 years of my life. And that was our greeting and our departure from then on, or whether we were talking on the phone, it would be our departure from the phone conversation. An incredible peace came over me that day when I said that prayer. And the incredible peace was that I knew now whatever happened in that battle, whether I lost my life or, I made it through, that was what was supposed to happen. And it helped in my ability to focus on what I had to do. I have taught my children, of course, my grandchildren, and my athletes that saying I love you is okay. One of my athletes from the 1980s I ran into last night, and the last thing he said before he had to leave was, I love you, Coach. Even those that I fought with. Joe Mittendorf, one of my machine gunners who actually got a puppy from my nephew that was spoken about here, Scott McCloughan, my older brother's son that's with Youth for Christ. He got a puppy from one of their litters, and the puppy's name is Doc. And when we talk, it's, I'll call you in a couple days, Joe, I love you. I love you too, Doc. So it's not a hard thing to do. I'd suggest if you haven't done that for somebody that you should have in a long time, go ahead. Shri has pointed out to me, they have credited me with saving 11 lives in the 48 hours going into the kill zone. I worked on about 50 or 60, but literally going out and dragging them back because they were either wounded and or unable to come back themselves. She's pointed out to me that I didn't only save 11 lives, I saved 11 family trees. Today, On this Father's Day, for some of those men, there are 3 generations of fathers. The man I saved, his son, and his grandson are all fathers. I'm going to read a portion. You couldn't give me a medal high enough for this either. From an Austin Pulfer, P-U-L-F-E-R, out of Ohio. Dear Mr. McCloughan, first and foremost, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Austin Pulfer, and I'm the grandson of Bill Arnold, the first man that I saved in that battle. His oldest daughter, Cindy, is my mother. She was born at Fort Knox in 1970, the year after the battle, because of you. Without your heroism, I wouldn't be alive today, nor would I be writing this letter to you if you would not have saved my grandpa, Bill. And I personally am beyond grateful because of you. I obviously have never met you, but little do you know how much admiration I have for you. Without you, Mr. McCloughan, my life as I know it would not exist. I'm proud to be an American solely because of the men like you, my grandfather, my brother, and my cousin. Men who are willing to sacrifice their lives to help out a fellow American. I wanted to be short and sweet and to the point with saying, thank you, Mr. McCloughan. We may never meet, but my family and I will forever be personally indebted to you with utmost respect. Austin Pulfer. It doesn't get much better than that. As we go through the day, remember the lesson that I learned, and thank God that I did, about saying the words. We don't only show folks that we love them, but we need to say it. And by the way, young lady, you dance beautifully. I love it. You dance beautifully. I love the way that you express the feeling that you get from the music. Very nice. God bless you all. God bless Calvary Reformed Church. And on a final note, I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there isn't any doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you so much. Just stay here a sec. Cherie?
Shree does all, you can sit down, you don't have to stand up. Shree does all of my work getting things lined up. As a matter of fact, I'll pick this up. As a matter of fact, every once in a while, I'll pick up the phone call coming in, and they say, oh, hi, Jim, how you doing? Hope everything's going well. Can I talk to Cherie?
Yeah.
That's how important I am.
Yeah. I don't think all the conversations that I've had with the two of you in the 9 months, I don't think I've ever talked to you once, Jim, on the phone or via email. It's always been your wife. I call her, she says, hi, Pastor Greg. So she's got our number. I just want to say thank you very much from all of us. We really deeply appreciate the fact. And just the fact, Jim, that the Lord has given both of you. I won't fall. Given both of you the opportunity with the Medal of Honor recipient to go out, and it's the honor, but also that you can bring Christ's grace into people's lives that maybe don't darken a church. but you're able to bring the love of Christ into people's lives through your speaking, and so that's an honor. So I just want to say thank you very much. Let's just have a word of prayer for both of them, for the work that they're called to do. Lord, we do ask that you would bless Jim and Sri, that you would continue to open up those doors, that you would give to them both, as Sri sets up the schedules, as Jim does the speaking, Lord, that you would use all the opportunities that they have to bring your grace and your love into people's lives. Oh, Lord, to call people to an eternal salvation. Lord, as he talked about the fact he was called, used by you to save people's lives for 1, 2, 3, 4 generations, Lord. But Lord, more than that is the fact that we're called to save people, to be used by you for the eternal salvation. And Lord, just use him in that process. Use them both, Lord. We seek this, and we know that you have offered it to them for their platform, for you. Lord, we ask all this in your name. Amen. Again, thank you very much. I'm going to have you both greet with me afterwards. Sure. So we'll just stand back there. Okay. Will the congregation please rise?